Gap fills. Today I'm going to explain the gap fill that happened today, the market rallying back. We talked about this whole entire move live before the move happened, the idea of filling this massive gap on the SPY and some serious profits made on this move. What's going on, guys? Patrick here. Just got back from the gym. We got a massive gap fill. I knew we were going to get that gap. I just knew it. I should have held on to it. Obviously, it's always, in hindsight, it's easier to look at it. But let's just talk about kind of the setup here and why I was believing that we would get the push over 4,000 on the ES. We get the push up on the SPY. I talked about it in the morning during the live stream, the idea that the SPY would break over the 396.60 area, and then once that happened, it's just been off to the races. This is the SPY chart right here. We talked about earlier the idea of filling this gap on the live stream this morning before the move happened. Old gap. If you see a big old gap in the chart like that on the SPY, well then I'm not gonna say it's guaranteed to fill, but that's a pretty big gap in that chart right there. So really what we were looking for was this breakout over the high of this candle right here. The high on that candle, 396.65. We pushed up there, we broke through that pivot, and then off to the races. Look at that move, filling that gap perfectly all the way back up there to the 400s. I talked about this whole entire move before it happened, but I want you guys to understand, like, why does this happen? What happens here is we basically have this big, massive gap. We gap down overnight. Remember, stocks are not trading all night long. Futures are trading at night, but the equity market is not trading at night. So what happens is pre-market, we get this move down on low volume, and then we start to bounce, and then that push back really becomes just a kind of squeeze, but also the price action kind of gives you this move up here. We just kind of push back up into the gap fill. So we're filling the gap here. You basically just have this, I would say it's like hot air. It's an area where the market really hasn't had true price action. We had the pre-market move, we had some of the overnight move, but in general, it's just not real action because we don't have a lot of volume. It's, actually during trading hours, during the actual open from 9:30 till 4 o'clock. This is what really matters. This is what we really focus on. And that gap fill right there played out perfectly. So the breakout over that 36.60 area, bang, 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 all the way to the moon. If we look here at the 3-minute chart, this was the setup we were looking for. We drew this line. Actually, this is still on the chart. We got the breakout over this high right here. So my entry was getting this breakout over the 95s and then up there to the 4,005. We already talked about that earlier in the video, but this next kind of breakout really gave you a amazing overall risk reward. Even if you're getting long, let's say you got long at the 4,000s, I mean, you're risking right off that 21 EMA, but in general, like, that's that move. What's interesting is I actually talked about this. I literally talked about this idea that I didn't like this pullback right here until we got more of a 45. Like, we needed more of a 45 angle on this pullback there. So it's kind of interesting because you can see here that steepness to that move is just too much. It's too steep. We basically, we need more dip. We need more dip there, and then we need that breakout. And that's exactly what we got once we got that kind of better overall, angle there on that kind of breakout pattern, trend, or whatever you want to call it. So there's the move all the way up there to the 4,030. So we were basically getting long here at the 88, 90 area, getting that move up there above 4,000. I mean, that's 40, 50 points today alone from this idea that I shared live on YouTube for you guys. So there it is. I mean, that's the setup. We're basically looking for the breakout over the high. We already talked about this setup right here, the breakout for that high push. We break out over that 395 level, and there's that push up. We got the breakout on the SPY, and that's where this move happened. And look at that, from the 4,000s all the way up there to the 36s. So if you ended up shorting today, let's say you shorted the top, trying to short the top, got squeezed out, well, you did something wrong, my friends. Again, another beautiful setup. This really came down to overall patience, having extreme patience, really. Like, what you want to see here is a overall good setup, right? We had this kind of choppy move in the morning, kind of choppy, not really loving it. I talked about the idea of not loving this as a short to go lower, especially with that massive gap to the upside. We had a little bit of support there as well with the pivots at the 67 on the ES. So we bounced off that pivot point almost perfectly there at the 67s. We push back up. We had the VWAP. We get above the VWAP. We then squeeze all the way up here to the next pivot point there at the 28, 30 level. So we had that pivot point right there at the 09s. We pushed through and just kept on going. So now the question is, do we kind of pull back into this pivot here at the 4000s again? Do we kind of chop around after that big move up? But that was the gap fill perfectly on the SPY. You can see the ES pivot points here. I like to just always keep the SPY chart pulled up and focused on those big gaps, especially a big massive gap. You know, a 5-point gap in the SPY really gives us a lot of potential upside move here. And this really come down to, and today really came down to, again, just being patient and waiting for that really good setup. You know, we want to wait for those really good setups because this is 30 points. 30 points to the upside. And look at this thing. You could have just rode this all the way up there to the 4,030s. You know, you look here at the 15-minute chart. I mean, we just pushing higher there. So you had plenty of time. I mean, this 15-minute chart breakout really was perfect in the sense of like you're basically buying the high over this candle here. I mean, there's a little dipper, but in general, I mean, the low on that candle right there is 98. So even if you bought the high of that candle right there, if you, let's say you got 03s, I mean, you're still okay in terms of risk to reward there. But really, I mean, this breakout right there, it's been green, 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 and just pushing up, you know, not breaking the lows of the previous candles until about like right there at the 20s. So even if you got in there at the 4,000, 4,002 area, you had plenty of time to take profit, take 10 handles, take 20 handles for that move up there on the 15-minute chart. We're holding that 80 EMA right now. It's almost the end of the day here, but that 3-minute chart really just giving you a perfect entry, a perfect setup, and it's all what we want. We want to see those nice and easy setups. The MACD wasn't beautiful. I would say that maybe that's the only thing to complain about on this move up here. But you can see how the MACD did cross here in this section. So once we finally broke out over this high, we had that push up. So if you were like, I'm going to wait for the MACD to cross, you could have done that and kind of got in here at this level when we were breaking above that 05 level, and then you still get that beautiful push up. But I just want you guys to understand, like, how much easier is it when you just wait for a good setup, when you wait for a good move? I mean, that's easy, right? Like, let's just say you jumped into the 05s for that breakout. All right, you go from the 06s, there's no drawdown. I mean, you jump in here. Let's say you get in right here at the 06s, you know, 02s, you're risking, you know, 3 or 4 handles. I mean, at that point, you're basically looking at like 4,000 support. But in general, you know, if you're buying in here at this breakout area, you're really like having very small drawdown, very small risk, and you're jumping in there. And look at that. I mean, easy up there to 21. So, I mean, let's just say best case scenario, you got in here, you know, at the 010. Let's just say you got it in 10s. If you got it in the 10s, look, it's green, 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 all the way up there to the 17s, and then you're holding maybe for the 20s. But, you know, either way, I mean, I don't want to say it's too easy, but it's almost too easy sometimes. So there it is, another beautiful gap fill, all talked about live on YouTube, 9:15 a.m. We're live every morning. Tune in. I'll see you guys there. Let's go.